Chapter 47. Jacob's mind was working fast, trying to think what it would mean if my family had to leave. My pack, Jacob thought worriedly. They'll have to go back to Sam. But he knew in his heart that Leah would never agree to that. There must be some way for the Cullens to stay in Forks. Bella snorted suddenly, bringing me back to her. I looked at her questioningly, but she just shook her head. I heard movement outside and checked Nessie through Rose's eyes. She had finished the bottle, and Rose was looking at Jacob, tapping her watch.
6 o'clock.
Rose started towards the door, but Jacob put an arm out in front, pausing her movement and stepping in front of her to enter the house first. Rose tightened her grip on Renesmee, following him inside. Both their eyes moved directly to Bella.
Has she got this, Edward?
Rose thought worriedly. Hearing their approach, Jasper moved directly to Bella's side. He looked at me. Do you think it's too soon to try this again? Maybe we should ask the wolf to leave. He was the one to agitate her in the first place. I considered. I'd love to throw Jacob out for the time being and relieve us of his interference and stench. But I suspected Bella would protest. Aggravated as she was with him, I knew she felt guilty about the attack. Bella was watching Carlyle come down the stairs with the scale and measuring equipment in confusion. Must be 6, I explained.
So?
Time to measure Ness. Oops. Renesmee, Carlyle answered.
Oh,
Bella said, her brow furrowed.
You do this every day?
4 times a day, said Carlyle, gesturing Rose towards the couch. She approached apprehensively.
4 times?
Bella said in confusion.
Every day? Why?
She's still growing quickly, I said quietly. I wrapped an arm around her, grateful once again for her presence. As much as I hated to burden her with these concerns, it was a relief to know that now it was something we could cope with together.
What do we do?
Bella whispered, her terrified eyes sealed onto Renesmee. What can we do? My thoughts mirrored her horror. We were nothing short of helpless to control her growth. I don't know. It's slowing, Jacob suddenly growled. It has to slow down. It has to. We'll need several more days of measurements to track the trend, Jacob. I can't make any promises. Yesterday she grew 2 inches. Today it's less. Carlyle blinked slightly in surprise. He hadn't realized Jacob had been paying such close attention to the measurements. But of course he would, he realized. By a 32nd of an inch, if my measurements are perfect. Be perfect, Doc, Jacob snapped.
The damn nerve,
thought Rosalie, glaring at him. You know I'll do my best, Carlyle sighed. Guess that's all I can ask for, Jacob muttered. Edward, thought Jasper. I glanced at him, and he inclined his head towards Bella. He's pissing her off again. I looked at Bella. Her eyes were narrowed at Jacob, her mouth set in a firm line. She seemed to be put out, perhaps by his hovering and questioning. Carlyle picked up the smaller measuring tape to use on Renesmee's head, but she had had enough.
Mommy,
she thought, her eyes fixed on Bella.
Mommy.
She reached out a small hand, and Rose bent forward to meet it. Rose's mind filled with the image of Bella, the view from her arms when she had held Nessie earlier, There was no doubt the demanding tone of Renesmee's thoughts. She was done with waiting. "What does she want?" Jacob asked, anxious.
Bella, of course.
Rose said with a sigh, glancing up at me.
Is it okay?
She looked with anxious eyes at Bella, concerned, but wanting to give Renesmee what she wanted.
How are you?
She asked Bella.
Worried,
Bella said, and I realized she meant about Renesmee and what she had just witnessed of her growth. I pressed her to me with my arm.
Yes, of course,
thought Rose.
We all are, but that's not what I meant.
Bella sighed.
I'm in control.
Her thirst seems firmly under wraps, Jasper affirmed. I don't like it. Jacob went to open his mouth to protest as his eyes swept up to mine, but he stopped, seeing my expression, which he managed to comprehend, luckily for him, that interference now would lead to his expulsion from this house. Ugh, fine, he thought, biting his lip to keep from saying anything. Rose took a small step towards Bella, her body and mind tense.
This is Bella,
she reminded herself.
She'll be okay. We worked so hard for this. She worked so hard. She would never hurt Nessie.
But her anxious emotions, all of our anxious fears, betrayed us to Jasper. He was working to keep his mind calm, to keep the tension that filled the room from bleeding his focus on the situation and on Bella. He let Nessie's radiating joy and adoration slip in a little to provide some much-needed relief and a reminder of what this all was for. Bella reached her arms out for the baby. Carlyle stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the situation. Jasper and I opened our hands, ready, but while Bella was nervous, Jasper could clearly sense her solid control. Renesmee stretched out anxiously, and Rose took a step closer, gently allowing Bella to take Nessie from her arms. Renesmee melted into Bella, a beautiful smile lighting her face.
Mommy!
Although her scent must have been intoxicatingly strong, there was no sense of increased thirst from Bella. I relaxed, nodding reassuringly at Rose and Jacob, although Jasper remained tense, stress in every line of his body. Renesmee placed her fingers on Bella's cheek, her face growing more serious, questioning. Bella gasped as her mind filled with the memory of Jacob being stalked by her across the lawn. I watched with pleasure. Bella was amazing, her face a dazzling blaze of fury, her lovely body so lithe and powerful as she launched herself at him. Jacob's mouth hung open in shock, and I couldn't help laughing at his rather dumbfounded expression at her flight towards him.
Seth, stop!
Seth's body entered the picture, and I cringed, the smile falling from my face as the snap of his bones rang through the air. Next to me, Bella winced. Renesmee's vision took on an edge of satisfaction and relief as Bella's flight was clearly halted. There was a growl and a flash of Leah's fur. Then Jasper appeared, a resounding crack as he slammed into Bella, followed by a loud thump as she knocked him into the dirt behind her. Bella moaned, shaking her head and closing her eyes, as my arms wrapped around her in Renesmee's mind, and she struggled to pull free. Then we all fell out of the picture, as Renesmee's thoughts focused solely on Jacob, safe, unhurt, and she smiled.
Jacob,
she thought, affection flavored with a sort of possession.
Mine.
Oh, wonderful, Bella moaned, catching the tone of Renesmee's thoughts.
Perfect.
It's just because he tastes better than the rest of us, I muttered. I told you she likes me too, said Jacob, smiling but still tense as he realized we were talking about him. I watched more memories of Rosalie brushing her hair and Carlyle measuring, a bored tone to the thought. I smiled. I could tell Renesmee was excited, just brimming with things she wanted to share with her mother. It looks like she's going to give you a rundown of everything you missed, I whispered in Bella's ear. Renesmee's next memory grew. She was lying in Rose's arms. Then, unexpectedly, a silver cup appeared in the image, and Nessie began to remember the scent, the taste of human blood. No! I snatched the baby from Bella's grasp. Jasper moved immediately, grabbing her arms and bending them behind her back, responding to my movements in fear, and then the flash of thirst he felt from Bella. Carlyle pressed forward, his hands ready. Jacob and Rosalie watching in confused horror.
What did I do?
Bella asked, her voice shocked but surprisingly calm. I glanced at Jasper. What set her off? He wondered, thinking of the flicker of thirst he had felt. He didn't sense it anymore. She was in control. Still in control? How was that possible? How could she be so acutely reminded of the smell of human blood, and not have her instincts driven mad with thirst? How could she have maintained control? But she was remembering being thirsty, I said desperately. I looked back at Bella. She was remembering the taste of human blood.
My God!
Rose's eyes were wide. Jesus! Jasper gripped Bella's arms harder in alarm. That's a damn close call, Edward. But as I looked at Bella, I realized, miraculously, that it wasn't. Her eyes were calm, no blaze of thirst in them. Her body loose, muscles uncoiled. There had been no instinctive reaction, other than the slight burning Jasper had sensed. Yes, said Bella, her voice slightly puzzled. And? I watched her carefully for another second, scouring her expression and reading her emotions in Jasper's mind, who was quickly succumbing to shock at her lack of thirst. What the hell? He grumbled. I laughed. And nothing at all, it seems. The overreaction was mine this time. Jas, let her go. Jasper released her quickly, his eyes wide. Bella immediately reached out for Renesmee, and I gave her back the baby, my gaze locked onto Jasper's increasingly distraught face. I don't understand, he thought, looking at Bella. Questions and doubt suddenly spiraling through his mind. How is she able to do it? How can a newborn be so controlled? Is it always possible? Are we all just weak to give in to it? Am I weak? His own mouth still stung with the venom that had sped in when he had sensed the quick burn of her thirst, and he swallowed it down with disgust. His mind flashed through the hundreds, thousands of temptations he had fought over the years, faceless humans, most with success, some not. He thought of his constant struggle against the scent of human blood, the power that the barely controllable thirst held over him. Then his eyes met mine, and the memory cut through both of us. Bella standing by my side, the foil gift in her hands. She watches me, her gaze full of adoration and love, and such youth. In her eyes is an innocence that I myself will strip away, mere days later. Innocence that will no longer be there when I see her again, many months later. Her finger slips, sliced by the thick paper, releasing a tempest of a scent from a single drop, which sweeps with blinding speed through the minds and bodies in the room, swirling into a burning, dark wind around Jasper, until it finally rips through him, engulfing his mind in black thirst. Jasper closed his eyes, banishing the rest, before settling his gaze on me again. I almost killed her, he thought despairingly. I almost killed her, and she forgave me. You all forgave me, for what was supposed to be natural, instinctive. He shuddered, thinking of all the times he had disappointed Alice. But was it really just simple weakness on my part? Was I always capable of more? I sighed. As painful as that memory was, I knew Jasper was taking this too hard. What Bella was proving capable of was beyond anything that could be expected, truly beyond what was normal. I shook my head slightly, trying to think of something to say to relieve him, but he saw only pity in my eyes and turned away. I can't stand this, he snapped. I can't bear this. I need to get the hell out of here. He moved swiftly across the room and out the door, running down the lawn and jumping over the river, heading north. I felt a flash of concern, hoping Alice was paying attention and would see where he was heading. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea for him to be alone, filled with such self-doubt. And then Alice's face filled his mind, her amber eyes always full of trust and hope. I need Alice, he realized, abruptly changing course. I relaxed. He was heading towards the cottage.
What the hell was all that about?
Rosalie wondered. I kept watching out the window. Renesmee's mind was filled with concern, and she was showing Bella her memory of Jasper leaving.
Jasper?
She wondered. He'll be back, I told her, watching the replay of Jasper's rather dramatic departure in her memory. And he always accused me of being the drama king, I thought, trying to suppress a smile. He just needs a moment alone to readjust his perspective on life.
Is he mad at me?
Bella whispered. No, I answered, glancing back at her in surprise. Why would he be?
What's the matter with him then?
I sighed. He's upset with himself, not you, Bella, I said quietly. He's worrying about self-fulfilling prophecy, I suppose you could say. How so? Asked Carlyle. I tried to frame the tumult in Jasper's mind without betraying his more personal thoughts. He's wondering if the newborn madness is really as difficult as we've always thought, or if, with the right focus and attitude, anyone could do as well as Bella. Even now, perhaps he only has such difficulty because he believes it's natural and unavoidable. Maybe if he expects more from himself, he would rise to those expectations. I paused, smiling at Bella, unable to suppress the feeling of pride. You're making him question a lot of deep-rooted assumptions, Bella. But that's unfair, Carlyle murmured. He shouldn't put that on himself. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own challenges. Perhaps what Bella is doing goes beyond the natural. Maybe this is her gift, so to speak. Self-control as a gift? That's an interesting theory, and quite plausible, I murmured. I looked at Bella with interest, thinking, it would be a rather intangible gift, hard to quantify. and our gifts often came from strengths present during our human lives, or at least that had been Carlyle's theory. Had Bella shown a penchant for self-control when I had known her? She was definitely a very careful person, but when she knew what or who she wanted, I suppressed a smile, thinking of the many times in her small bed that she had shown very little self-control, and worked very hard to thwart my own with her warm hands and soft lips. I glanced towards the back windows, wondering when Alice was going to return. "Have you ever seen an equivalent to self-control as a talent?" I asked, looking back at Carlyle. "Do you really think that's a gift, or just the product of all her preparations?" "It's slightly similar to what Siobhan has always been able to do, though she wouldn't call it a gift," Carlyle answered. I frowned. Carlyle was aware I didn't fully agree with his theories about Siobhan's possible talents. "Keep an open mind, Edward," he thought.
Siobhan? Your friend in that Irish coven?
Rosalie spoke up.
I wasn't aware that she did anything special. I thought it was Maggie who was the talent in that bunch.
"Yes, Siobhan thinks the same, but she has this way of deciding her goals and then almost willing them into reality. She considers it good planning, but I've always wondered if it was something more." Rose looked skeptical. "When she included Maggie, for instance, Liam was very territorial, but Siobhan wanted it to work out, and so it did." "Well," I started. Carlyle cocked his head towards the furniture. "Let's sit if we're going to have a discussion." He glanced at Bella. "And give Bella a little time alone with Nessie." I nodded, hating to leave her side, but wanting to give her space. He and I moved over to the chairs, and Rose took a seat on the couch. "Our gifts are an intensification of traits we held as humans," I said. "Or at least that's what you've always said, Carlyle. What should Siobhan's human characteristic have been?" I paused, thinking. "What you theorize about Siobhan suggests she has the power to affect the decisions and actions of others. Do any of us have that innate possibility, human or vampire?"
What about what Jasper does, though? Said Rosalie. He affects how we feel and act.
Jasper affects our physical body, not our mind, I countered. In saying Siobhan can will things to be, do you feel she can extend her desires to guide future events? Carlyle shook his head. I don't mean to say that she uses a mental power to control others, or a gift to manipulate the future, more that she is gifted with a sixth sense of what others will do, of what motivates or influences them, and she uses that information to help sway the outcome. He put a finger to his chin. You could say the same about Chelsea's gift. She can affect our emotions, our attachment to another person.
What exactly is Chelsea's gift?
Rosalie asked. Carlyle launched into a discussion of the Volturi's known gifts, while I added some insight I had gained in the minds of those I had met. My mind wandered back to Bella and Renesmee, catching Renesmee's memory of me singing my mother's lullaby, Bella's still form next to us. As I watched the varying images Nessie shared, it felt, fleetingly, that sharing these thoughts she put into Bella's mind was almost as if I was seeing into Bella's mind myself. My eyes were drawn towards them. Bella was standing, her back to the window, gazing down at Renesmee's face. Renesmee's small hand caressed Bella's cheek as she shared the many moments Bella had missed while she slept. They were truly a vision. My wife holding my daughter. I felt suddenly inordinately happy and somewhat unworthy. How had this miracle come to be? Watching them together, finally, I realized that although I had always been captivated by Bella's eyes set in Renesmee's face, the resemblance went much further than that. Renesmee reflected Bella in the heart-shaped curve of her cheeks, pale skin tinted with a familiar blush, in the delicate shape of her rose-colored lips, and the shape of her eyes. With a catch of my breath, I realized, while their color had bloomed from her mother, the curve of her eyes were mine, and I was present in the straight lines of her nose, and the color of the curls that framed her face. And I grasped, suddenly, in a breathtaking, fundamental way, that she was truly mine. From the moment I had laid eyes on my daughter, or actually, from the moment I had been blessed to hear her beautiful mind, I had known that she was the child of my heart. But perhaps it was only now, as I acknowledged my face echoed in her own, that I finally comprehended that she was also the child of my flesh, that my body had been involved in her creation. There had been a time when I had thought this vessel that I lived in was only capable of destroying life through death or the eternal loss of a soul. To know that I had contributed to the organic process of life, that the essence of my body had been mixed with the one I love to produce skin and bones and mind, was a staggering new awareness. I was compelled to stand up and embrace them both, when Bella's face suddenly creased with worry, her eyes roving over Renesmee's face. I realized Renesmee was drifting off, her thoughts beginning to float in uneven patterns, until finally her eyes closed and she was asleep. Her hand fell, but Bella carefully picked it up, placing it gently against her cheek again. I smiled at the wonder in Bella's face as she watched the dreams of our daughter, the moving kaleidoscope of faces against a sea of soft colors.
"Hello, Edward."
Rose's irritated voice broke into my thoughts.
"Are you listening at all?"
I turned back to her and Carlyle, my eyes catching the clock. Almost midnight. Where are they?
"I asked you if you thought Kate's gift was physical or mental," said Rosalie.
I looked at her slightly confused. "That is," Carlyle said, "does her body actually produce an electrical current, or is the sensation a mental one?" I paused, thinking for a moment. "I've seen in her mind as she visualizes the current. She has control over it mentally. Much like Jane, to be truthful." "Fascinating," murmured Carlyle. We spent some more time analyzing the respective gifts of our vampire friends and family. Eventually, I caught Alice's mental call.
"We're back, Edward."